How great a forest is set ablaze by a small fire, and the tongue is a fire. The tongue is placed among our members as a world of iniquity. It stains the whole body, sets on fire the cycle of nature, and is itself set on fire by hell. James continues in his letter to hold up to us this gap that can form between our beliefs and our behaviors, between the way of Christ, the logic of God, and the way of the world, the earthly logic of scarcity and conflict. And he continues to pull no punches. And so here in this part of his letter, our focus is the power of the tongue, the power of our words, our speech. For James, our words are particularly potent and particularly dangerous. St. James does not adhere to the old playground wisdom of sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. No, for James, words are far more dangerous than sticks or stones, because while they may break bones, they can never poison the soul like words can. The tongue, a restless evil full of deadly poison. Is it really that serious? Are words really so dangerous? Well, think about this. Have you ever talked to someone who fell away from the church, who decided to leave the community? The more you talk to such people, the more a common theme will emerge in so many words, because what you'll hear are plenty of stories of people being hurt because of something another church member said. Whether it was simply an uncaring word at an inopportune time, an undue harshness, or the result of gossip, how many have felt betrayed by the community of believers? How many have felt themselves rejected by God because of something they heard spoken from one of God's representatives? This is what St. James is referring to when he says the tongue sets on fire the cycle of nature. Human beings operating under the logic of the world, even before we developed language, we're able to gesture, to point a finger at others in a spirit of accusation, of blame. Involve our tongues, and it just becomes more sophisticated. Faced with conflict, we use our tongues to get the gossip going, to accuse and blame, to create an in-group for ourselves and an out-group, an other, a minority to blame for all our problems. This is the cycle of nature that we all too eagerly set ablaze with our tongues. It may give us a sense of peace for a time to do so, but it's a peace that comes at the cost of others. A peace that consumes others like a fire. And for St. James, this is made all the worse when you consider that this same tongue that consumes others is the very same tongue we use to bless God. We know that a spring cannot bring forth both fresh water and brackish, and we know fig trees don't yield grapes. So what does it say about the state of our hearts when we choose to bring forth gossip instead of blessing? We actually see this play out in our gospel reading this morning. Jesus asks the disciples who they believe that he is, and Peter speaks the truth. He makes a true confession and names Jesus as the Messiah. But then, after Jesus reveals to him what that really means, what he must undergo as the Messiah, Peter speaks again. But now his words are words of rebuke against Jesus. And what does Jesus say in response to that? "Get behind me, Satan." Could you get a harsher response from Jesus than that? Satan? The Lord of hell? Oh, yes. After all, Satan is none other than the accuser, the one who points and blames. Satan is the personification of this very cycle of nature that James has identified, this human tendency to blame, to speak ill of, to other. And so long as Peter fails to see how Jesus has come to expose and defeat this cycle of nature, he is at risk of succumbing to it, of setting it on fire with his tongue. And that's exactly what happens. In the very moment when Jesus is on trial, when he is bearing all of the false accusations of this world, as humanity others him, points at him in blame, Peter uses his tongue once again and denies Christ 3 times. His own fiery tongue added to the flames of the crowd as he seeks a peace that comes at the cost of another. Now, you might be thinking at this point of those times when you also used your own tongue to blame and consume others. I can certainly find plenty of moments to replay in my mind where I allowed myself to be careless with my words. It can be a terrible thing to realize you've succumbed to this cycle of nature, uttering the words of the accuser of Satan with your own tongue. But the point here is not to despair. After all, this is what Christ came for: to undergo great suffering, to be rejected and killed, to bear our cycle of nature, to descend into the hellfires we set ablaze with our tongues, and to defeat it. Jesus did not come into our midst to blame us. He never deflected the accusations made against him toward a common enemy. No, he simply allows himself to be led like a lamb to its shearers. He goes to the cross, taking on all of our accusations, and he forgives. This is how he breaks our cycle of nature. He forgives us. And he invites us to, as Bonhoeffer calls it, take up again the ministry of holding one's tongue. To leave our negative thoughts as mere thoughts, choosing not to give voice to them. To follow Christ beyond our cycle of nature and instead give voice to blessings, to building up others, to denying yourself by letting go of the need to protect your own ego with your words, to give up on the logic of the world, this cycle of nature, and to embrace instead the logic of God, the way of the cross.